Guys, did Taylor Swift secretly write a book? No, of course she didn't. Okay, thanks for watching. No, but for real though, there is a book. They turned it into a movie, even though the book is not very good. And people are freaking out because they think Taylor Swift wrote it. But it turns out the real answer is even weirder. Hi, I'm D'Angelo, and at this point, introducing myself would be like introducing the sun. We already know I'm hot and everything revolves around me. Anyway, I'm glad you're here because today we have ourselves a murder mystery. Actually, no one was murdered, but something equally tragic happened. I had to read an entire book for this video. A book! It was like text with no character limit. Forget murder, I almost died of boredom because this book sucks. So how then did it get turned into a $200 million movie before the book was even released? And despite having all kinds of big names attached from Dua Lipa to Henry Cavill, why was the marketing and rollout of said movie an absolute mess? The movie's not out yet, but early reviews are, and let's just say the critics didn't seem to enjoy the film version of Argylle any more than I enjoyed the book. And speaking of reviews, you might even get a little bonus at the end of this video because right after I finish recording this, Argylle officially releases in theaters. It should be out by the time you're watching this, so I may be able to pop in from the future and give my own mini review. And who knows, maybe the critics were wrong. Hi, it's me popping in from the future. Please save me, the critics were not wrong. The book is a bust, the film is a flop, it's like a cinematic universe of sadness, but at the center of said universe, there really is a mystery. Who actually wrote Argylle? And why do people think it's Taylor Swift? Or why do Swifties think it's Taylor Swift? I have strong opinions about Swifties, but we'll get to those later. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot going on, and I'm going to go over all of it. But first, let's take a quick look at today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Air Up. Now, stop me if this is too much of a hot take, but I think water is really good for you. Problematic, I know. Apology video incoming. But jokes aside, I always feel way better when I'm properly hydrated, but it can get a little monotonous drinking so much of the same thing every day. But that is where scent flavored water with Air Up comes in. First, I fill my Air Up bottle with drinking water. Just water. There are no additives required. Next, I attach the straw and insert the special lid. Then I pop on an Air Up flavor pod, and this is where it all comes together. When you drink through the straw, an Air Up water bottle transports water and air into your mouth. This air is scented via the flavor pod, and your brain actually perceives it as flavor, which is a phenomenon known as scent-based taste. So lastly, I just pop up the flavor pod to activate it and let the flavor begin. You can also deactivate it depending on how you feel. It's time to choose both health and flavor with Air Up. So click the link in the description to check out their flavors and get started today. All right, let's get into the video. The marketing and rollout of Argylle can only be described as a constant cycle of confusion, and this went on for 2.5 years. So at this point, the only way to cut through the chaos is to look at it one day at a time. July 7th, 2021. Observer.com publishes an unconfirmed report that director Matthew Vaughn has a new unnamed film coming out about a quote world-class spy suffering from amnesia. From the rumors that he's enlisting actors like Samuel L. Jackson and Bryce Dallas Howard to his previous track record with films like Kingsman and X-Men First Class, the report seems likely enough, but it remains unconfirmed and no mainstream outlets pick up on it until July 8th, 2021. One day later, it looks like the rumors were all true. The movie Argylle is officially announced with not only Jackson and Howard, but also Henry Cavill, John Cena, Bryan Cranston. Like, this cast is absolutely stacked. Not just that, but it's going to be a whole franchise with not just one, but 3 movies planned minimum. And it's all going to be based off a book called Argylle by first-time author Ellie Conway. A book which at this point has not yet been released and is slated for release in 2022. When I read this early draft manuscript, I felt it was the most incredible and original spy franchise since Ian Fleming's books of the 50s, aka James Bond. The director Matthew Vaughn is comparing this unreleased book to literally the most iconic spy series of all time. This is going to reinvent the spy genre, he says. No pressure. Notably, the only difference between the official announcement and the previous day's rumors is that references to amnesia are conspicuously absent. Instead, the producers say the film simply follows the globe-trotting adventures of a super spy named Argylle. Anyway, now that the news is out, people are excited and this is getting reported all over the place. I mean, you've got the big name director, this apparently revolutionary book, and of course the crazy cast. Like, even Dua Lipa will be in this movie as her first foray into acting, or what people thought would be her first foray into acting. The cast for Barbie has not yet been announced. August 4th, 2021. 1 month after the announcement, Apple TV has officially secured the rights to Argylle for a whopping $200 million? You know what? Suddenly, I love books. I love writing. I'm going to write a book. March 8th, 2022. The new year rolls around and Apple TV shares the very first look at the movie Argylle. And why does Henry Cavill's hair look like that?
Look at the top of his head.
Maybe it's just the angle? Anyway, now that it's 2022, we finally get to see what all of the fuss is about because the book Argylle by Ellie Conway is officially released. Oh wait, no it's not. They said it was coming out in 2022 and it just doesn't. The new release date is apparently March 30th, 2023, but the book is not the only thing that nobody can find. September 15th, 2022, The Hollywood Reporter attempts to contact Ellie Conway, but this does not work. Conway's publisher ghosted. Conway's agent, no reply. THR couldn't even get an advance copy of the book, which was supposedly coming out very soon. It was already mysterious enough that a first-time author somehow got the attention of one of the largest streaming services and one of the most prominent action movie directors and some of the biggest stars on the big screen, and the fact that she managed to do so without releasing the book to the public at all takes this from mysterious to bizarre. But now you're telling me that Ellie Conway also has no online presence or even a way for the media to reach her? Something ain't right. And at this point, some people start to think it all seems a bit like a marketing stunt. January 10th, 2023, Apple confirms in a press release that Argylle is officially slated for release later in the year. But first, March 30th, 2023, the day has arrived. After nearly 2 years of waiting, the world finally gets to read Argylle by Oh, nope, it doesn't, because the book literally does not come out. Again, at this point, people have even pre-ordered the book, but Amazon says it's not coming until mid-July. Wait, sorry, early November? June 15th, 2023. Oh, and also the movie is not coming out this year after all because it's been pushed back to 2024. At this point, I think it's safe to say things are going awry behind the scenes. Will this movie ever come out? Does the book even exist? Is Henry Cavill's weird hair canon because it looks exactly like it does on the book cover? Wait. But finally, we get something concrete when on September 28th, 2023, the official trailer for Argylle is finally released. And hold on, Ellie Conway is in the movie, like not as an actor but as a character. So it turns out Bryce Dallas Howard is playing a character named Ellie Conway who in the movie wrote a hugely successful book called Argylle. And Ellie finds herself targeted by spies because the things she's writing in her fictional spy books are a little too close to the actual top secret things that said spies are doing.
What you wrote in your new book actually happened, and you kicked a hornet's nest you didn't even know existed.
And you know what? That is an interesting premise, and I'm sure the twist in that movie will be very unpredictable and not something that was already revealed literal years ago in the Observer article from before the movie was released, where they already told us that Ellie is a spy, but she just has amnesia. Anyway, the only thing anyone can talk about from the trailer is Henry Cavill's hair once again, because oh my god, it's even worse from the front. October 26th, 2023. Taylor Swift fans think she secretly wrote Henry Cavill's new spy movie. So I promise I can explain this one, and it's actually just one word. TikTok. A series of TikToks go viral in which users believe that not only is Taylor Swift behind the Argylle franchise, but this whole time she's also been leaving a bunch of clues that all but confirm her involvement in the series. And what are these clues? Well, buckle in. Ellie is a redhead author, and Taylor once played a redhead author in a short film. Ellie and Taylor both have the cat backpack. Ellie's cat is the same breed as Taylor's cats. Ellie Conway's first Instagram post was on Taylor Swift's birthday. Swift once wore a Conway Studio sweatshirt. Taylor Swift has worn clothing with an Argylle print. I mean, if that's proof, then at this point, I may as well be Ellie Conway. Like, look at me in this video. I look so good. Actually, wait, don't look at that video. I was having a mental breakdown. Anyway, all this to say, literally none of this proves that Taylor Swift wrote Argylle, but did that stop Swifties from running with this? No, of course it didn't. And honestly, even I can agree, some of the similarities here are a bit too weird to just be coincidences. So here's what I think happened. Conjecture alert. Basically, some of Taylor Swift's fans need to touch grass. Now, I shouldn't even have to clarify, but obviously, there's nothing wrong with liking T-Swizzle or listening to her music. Even I've been known to wear a cardigan or two myself. What I'm talking about is when a Taylor Swift obsession drives one to cause problems for other people, to bring her up in scenarios that have nothing to do with her, and to generally just be unhinged. Like, you know, hearing that Taylor Swift is at a New Jersey restaurant trying to chill at her friend's wedding rehearsal and swarming said restaurant, shutting down the street and resulting in the police showing up. Those are the Swifties for which I believe additional hobbies would be beneficial. And obviously, a few hundred people in the street don't represent all of Taylor's untold millions of fans, but my point is, the fact that there are people this ride or die in her fan base is something that is now being capitalized on by non-Taylor entities, or NTEs, which is a phrase I just just made up. But the phenomenon is real, okay? When Taylor Swift started attending her footballer boyfriend Travis Kelce's NFL games, the NFL ramped up their fixation on her, even putting her in their bio and TikTok header, and it got to the point where even Travis said they're overdoing their focus on her during crowd shots. When Taylor Swift was spotted near a pile of ranch dressing at one of said football games, Heinz, Hidden Valley, and Buffalo Wild Wings used the moment to promote their products and even release special editions of said products. Like, examples like this are common, but they raise an interesting question. What if you just bypass Taylor Swift's involvement altogether? The director already said he was influenced by Taylor Swift, hence the cat backpack, so why not go the extra mile? People aren't really obsessed with Argylle, mostly because literally nobody asked for this franchise, but they are obsessed with Taylor Swift, so if you can kind of sort of make it seem like Argylle is Taylor Swift, then maybe people will actually care, which is exactly what happened. In a way, I'm almost surprised that this is the first movie to try something like this. But yeah, in my opinion, there are only two possibilities. This was either really good yet fairly underhanded marketing, or this was all somehow just a convenient accident that just so happened to get them millions of dollars in free advertising all over TikTok and the media outlets without ever having to pay Taylor Swift a dime. And trust me, when it comes to advertising, there are no accidents. But also, literally none of this brings us any closer to the truth of who actually wrote the book, and instead of answers, we're just in for even more questions. October 19th, 2023, director Matthew Vaughn goes on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast to reveal that Argylle the movie is actually based on book 4 of Argylle the book series, which is apparently a series now.
Book 4, which is the movie's based around, was the one that would work for it. So book 1 is being published, but book 1 is, you have to, listen, Mr. Lucas was clever enough to start Star Wars at episode 4, so why not us?
So it turns out that the book and the movie that we've been waiting for this entire time are two different stories. Okay, cool.
You'll read book 1, which I hope to actually shoot next.
So you jump back to book 1.
Book 1, yes.
Okay.
There is a scene of book 1 in the movie.
Thanks, Matthew. Not confusing at all. December 30th, 2023. The Telegraph publishes a review of Argylle, and oh my god, the book is actually real. How has she written such a good spy thriller? The review asks of definitely not a real person at this point, Ellie Conway, and it says that the book is full of descriptive prose, splendid set pieces, and that it's a, quote, excellent example of an action thriller, even if it doesn't quite reinvent any genres a la Matthew Vaughn's claims. So at this point, the director is hyping the book up, this review is hyping the book up, the book actually seems to exist, and all that remains is January 9th, 2024. Okay, it's out. I read it. Now that we've relived the nightmare this book had to go through to wind up in my hands, let's dive into the even worse nightmare that was me attempting to read it. Synopsis. Quirky CIA agents stop a rich politician from using a long-lost treasure to create Super Russia. Okay, look, I can summarize the plot of this book in less than 30 seconds, or you can get your money back, even though this is a free video. Okay, so Aubrey Argylle, yes, his name is Aubrey, gets recruited by the CIA after rescuing some US government operatives in Southeast Asia, despite his background as the child of weed smugglers. His new job introduces him to fellow teammates Wyatt, whose last name is Woody for some reason, and Aaron, whose last name I don't remember, but Argylle thinks she's a total baddie. Under the leadership of Spymaster Francis Coffey, their goal is to stop the psychopathic yet hard to take seriously bad guy from building a, quote, united ultra-right Russian superstate. Thus ensues a globe-spanning treasure hunt to burgle the bad guy's bling bracelet before he can use it to achieve his nefarious goals. Also, there's apparently a traitorous mole on the team, and you'll never guess who it is. The end. Oof, looks like that was slightly more than 30 seconds. Well, guess I gotta give you $0, or something worth $0. Oh, here, you can have my copy of the book. Story. Too many moving parts without much happening at all, ending in a highly predictable plot twist. I feel like most spy story villains want to do things like, I don't know, release a deadly bioweapon or unleash an EMP that takes out everyone's technology or something with immediate stakes. But the bad guy in this book is literally just trying to become the president of Russia? It doesn't feel very urgent. And yes, he's gonna build Super Russia or whatever, but the book doesn't go into much detail about what that actually means or what would happen because of it. And Russia is kind of already known for having an awful president in real life, so I'm not really sure what this character gives that I couldn't get just by reading world news. And if we, the readers, can't feel the urgency from the bad guy, you would hope that the protagonists do at least, but the characters don't really come up with a main objective until like 40% of the way through the book. And even after it's stated, it doesn't do much to stop the whole thing from feeling like a collection of random scenes and random places that are only tangentially related to their vague goal of stopping the bad guy. Like, what does stealing a bracelet really have to do with preventing a presidency? What if you stop him from finding the treasure and then he gets elected anyway? How does literally any of this matter? One way this book does try to spice things up is with a B plot culminating in a plot twist at the end, but even that was extremely lackluster. Remember in the synopsis when I said that you would never guess who the mole is? I lied. I mean, maybe you'd never guess if you read it with your eyes closed, but literally all you have to do is stop and ask, whose betrayal would hurt the main character the most? And then surprise, it's that person. Halfway through the book, I was like, oh, it's 100% that person. But then I reached the end and I was like, oh, yeah. It was 100% that person. And in addition to the plot twist, if that even really counts as a plot twist, the book also tries to surprise you with this half-hearted, open-ended type thing where basically the good guys think they won, but right at the end, they didn't. And a book should not need a Marvel movie style after credit scene to get you to read the second one. And either way, it didn't work because you could not pay me to read another one of these at this point. Actually, you could, let's be honest. I'm a YouTuber, you could pay me to do anything, but I wouldn't be happy about it. Overall, the story was just not very good at conveying any sort of thrill, which is kind of a complete failure considering the book is, you know, a thriller novel. Characters, walking stereotypes that aren't deep enough to relate to, care about, or even remember. This book suffers from what I call Tintin syndrome, which is that the story has so many characters from so many different locations that they're all just reduced to stereotypes for the sake of keeping the story moving. Oh, you're American? Okay, great. You're from a military family and your personality is America. Oh, you're Mexican? Okay, awesome. You're an immigrant who came here to escape gang violence. Oh, you're Russian? Okay, fantastic. You were formerly in the KGB. Literally every Russian character in this story is a bad guy, to the point where Conway just starts using bad guy and Russian interchangeably by the end of the book. The Russian hasn't time to react before the full force of a suspended wooden seat hits him in the face, knocking him to the ground. But now there is another Russian coming. Just an endless stream of Russians, like there's some sort of mob of duplicate NPCs in a video game. And speaking of the Mexican character, his sole purpose is just to inspire the main character to achieve his goals. Like Argylle turns down the CIA job at first, but then he sees this random Mexican teenager in the street who proceeds to give him his whole life story about how he crossed the border with the last $500 his mom gave him, and Argylle's like, wow, you are so real for that. If this brave immigrant boy can risk it all to escape systemic violence, then I too can accept a government job offer from people who flew me in internationally and literally handed me money on the plane for no reason. And then the kid is never mentioned again. Like, I'm not kidding. I love it when side characters have trauma that exists solely to be used as an accessory to our privileged protagonist. Oh, and because the characters don't have personalities or really any kind of internal uniqueness at all, the author desperately overcompensates for that by obsessively describing her character's physical traits over and over and over to the point where it just becomes grating. Like when one character is introduced, it says he, quote, towers above most people in the bar. And it's like, okay, tall dude, got it. Then it says he's built like a tank. And it's like, yep, still got it. He's a big man, it says, which, yeah, I think that's been established. He dwarfs the slight figure in front of him, which is pretty much the same thing that was said 2 pages ago. He's built like a truck. Yes, he's built like a truck and also built like a tank, which was also said 2 pages ago. At this point, I'm starting to think this character might be large. And I'm not exaggerating either. All of these descriptions happen within the first 3 pages of introducing this guy. And on the off chance that you didn't get it the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth times, don't worry, because she mentions this guy's size literally every time he's present, which is almost the entire book. And as more characters are introduced, each with their own physical descriptions like slender, expressionless, or has a boob job, as one character is repeatedly described for some reason. It's like Conway is allergic to bringing up these characters without mentioning something about their appearance. But that something is the same thing she mentioned every other time, even in situations where it makes absolutely no sense to bring it up. The chunky Canadian wades through the 6-inch deep water. Like, my man is literally just walking, but you gotta bring up his weight for the 3rd time. And for what? Pacing. Non-stop action, aka random chaos, broken up by chapters full of overlong expository dialogue. This book has plenty of action sequences in the form of the CIA missions that the characters go on, but they can all be described as formulaic nonsense. So like, they'll have a goal, like, oh, we have to go to this rich people party and steal this bracelet that's on display. And then they get there and surprise, the bracelet isn't on display. It's being worn by the bad guy's wife. So then it's like, okay, new goal. We have to incapacitate the wife somehow. Let's make all the lights go crazy and purposely give her a seizure. I wish I was making that one up, by the way, but they literally tried to trigger her epilepsy and then roofie her, and they justify it because she's mean, basically. But then surprise, it turns out the guy who runs the light show for the party got stuck in traffic. So now it's like, let's do a high-speed motorcycle chase to go find him. Seriously, the action sequences in this book are absolutely nonsensical, and they all follow the same format of taking a clear goal, making up a series of bizarrely coincidental setbacks, and then having the characters overcome all of them effortlessly with their super spy intellect or whatever. And it doesn't help that the things they're doing are kind of low stakes in the first place, like stealing a bracelet or stealing a different bracelet or looking for treasure or looking for a different treasure. Like, honestly, things are happening, but at the same time, nothing is happening. And the only reason you know the world is in danger is because they keep repeating this every 5 pages. And speaking of telling, instead of showing, the sections between the action sequences are just painful. It almost feels like all of the action scenes were drafted first, and then everything else in the book was just an afterthought to connect everything together with a bunch of overlong explanations and history facts straight from Wikipedia. I'm not even really opposed to calmer sequences in books. My problem is just because the characters aren't breaking into billionaire parties in France or stealing treasure from a monastery in Greece doesn't mean things should be boring. And you know, part of this is a genre thing. Historical trivia just isn't really one of my special interests, especially when it comes to like World War II and Nazis, etc. So the fact that multiple sections of this book are just no frills explanations of everything from Napoleon's wife to Hitler's art collecting habits, it felt like a slog to read. And while I can appreciate that it took a good deal of research to write something like this, I kind of don't want to read your research. I literally feel like I learned more about history than I did about other somewhat important things like, you know, the characters, their motivations, and why I should care about any of this in the first place. Writing. Serviceable prose marred by distracting usage of Briticisms coming from American characters. Okay, here's where it gets weird. So, despite generally good writing, there are definitely a few head scratchers in there, with one character described as a dumb man mountain of macho bigotry, and another as making Pablo Escobar look like Mary Poppins. But the cringe-inducing one-liners are few and far between, making them easy enough to ignore. But what is not, however, easy to ignore is the inescapable fact that the writer is 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt British. Like, where's my tea, God save the Queen levels of British. And usually that wouldn't be a problem at all. I've read plenty of British books and some of my best friends are British, but the reason it sticks out like a sore thumb in this book is that, according to her own bio, the author, Ellie Conway, was, quote, born and raised in upstate New York. And unless there's an upstate New York across the pond that I've never heard of, something ain't adding up. And it's definitely not Taylor Swift writing this. I know she went on her Eras tour or whatever, but she wasn't in Europe for that long. But yeah, this whole thing just comes across as lazy to me. So the author bio is most likely fabricated to tie in with the movie Big Whoop, but writing that fictional book with prose that sounds like it's straight from the BBC is kind of shattering the illusion a bit. And if you're wondering how I know there's no way this was written by someone who lives in New York or, you know, any of the other 49 states in this country, here's what I mean. First of all, the entire book is written with single quotes for dialogue instead of double quotes. Besides that, anytime a word is used that can be spelled 2 different ways, that word is spelled the British way 10 times out of 10. We've got everything from colors with a U to maneuver with an O. Besides that, it's just front to back Briticisms, like saying a spot of something instead of a little bit of something, or calling the trash collectors waste hauliers instead of waste haulers. After a certain point, I got so bored with the book that I wasn't sure if I was actually reading for the plot or just reading so I could spot the difference between British and American English. And you know, just to be clear, I'm not just talking about the writer herself being British. The fact that the third person narration measures things in kilometers instead of miles doesn't really dampen my enjoyment. But where it becomes a problem for me is that even the characters within the book, these supposedly American characters, sound like they're from Bridgerton. One of her characters is described, multiple times of course, as being a guy from Texas, but at one point he uses the phrase dicking around to refer to the action of playing around. Okay, I'm editing the video right now and I just reread the passage and he actually said dicking about, which is like somehow even more British. As an actual guy from Texas, I just need you to know that that would literally never happen. Another character, specifically the Murica character with his quote, all-American military background, uses the phrase queer the pitch to refer to messing up a plan. And at that point, I was like, did they write this entire book and then just change their mind and said it in America after the fact? In a moment that comes so close to self-awareness, an actual British character in the book says, one is never quite sure which terms cross the Atlantic, as it were. You think? Genre. Retreading all the hallmarks of the spy thriller genre without adding anything fresh or insightful. So to wrap it up, does this at least function as a spy novel? Yeah, sure, technically. But it almost feels like a straight-to-DVD Disney movie. It's like Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. Not a Disney movie per se, but also not good and not necessary in any sense of the word. With Argylle, so many iconic adventure stories came before it with basically the same plot points, and this book just feels like it's trying to capture their original magic, but with none of the original cast and only a $10 animation budget. In fact, I think the biggest question I have for this book is why? Why any of this. And I don't mean it in a pretentious art must exist for a reason kind of way. I just genuinely want to know why it was written, because I can't even say it was a fun read. It was cliched, tedious, predictable, uninspired, and the only thing it made me feel was constant annoyance at how many pages I had left. I joked earlier about the book being worth $0, but unfortunately, it was more like 30 by the time it was all said and done. And I literally think I could have taken that money, paid someone on Fiverr, and wound up with a more compelling James Bond fanfiction than this. But yeah, that's Argylle by Ellie Conway. So we've looked at the marketing, we've looked at the book, but all that's done is raise more questions than answers when it comes to who actually wrote this thing. And Taylor Swift was just the most popular theory. At this point, I've seen people online suspect everyone from J.K. Rowling because she's British to Kellyanne Conway, because you know, Ellie, Kellyanne, Conway. And honestly, if it did turn out to be either of those two people and I read their entire book, I think I would just stare directly at the sun. That way I never had to read a word again. But no, it's not either of them. And yes, it's finally time to solve the mystery that's been plaguing this entire video once and for all. Who the heck is Ellie Conway? As far as I know, the only social media account officially belonging to Ellie is at Ellie Conway on Instagram. Lately, it's just turned into a full-blown Argylle promotional account, but if you scroll before all of that, you can see there are some other posts here that give us a bit more information. No selfies, no backstory, just a bunch of environmental things. So we've got pizza, brownstones, pigeons. This account is really trying to sell the I live in New York image. This is so 1989 coded. And as you can see, the comment section is almost exclusively Taylor truthers. How do you fluster an introvert, publish her first novel, have Matthew Vaughn buy the movie rights, then tell her she has to start using social media for visibility? Actually, Ellie, that's not quite the order in which that happened, now is it? But you know what? I'm just gonna go a step further and say that this account is probably not even run by the same person who wrote the book. Almost every single post is promoting the book or movie in some way. There's no information about her writing process, her inspirations, none of that. She doesn't even talk about the characters in the book. Like, forget writing Argylle. Did the person behind this account even read Argylle? The only posts that are not, I definitely live in New York, and please read and also watch Argylle, are a few pictures of other books that they added in, I guess to try to make it less obvious that this is a promotional account. Somehow missed reading this when it came out. Stayed up way too late reading it last night. You know, I actually read The Girl on the Train last month as well, so again, have you ever seen Ellie Conway and me in the same room? I'm just saying. I read The Girl on the Train last month, I read The Silent Patient. Actually, I think I read like 12 thrillers in January. Hyperfixation is a hell of a drug, but unfortunately, one of those thrillers was Argylle. Anyway, at Ellie Conway on Instagram, useless. Follow me on Instagram instead, at D'Angelo. I don't always remember my Instagram password, but when I do, the fits are fire. Like, who is doing it like me? Now, at this point, you might be wondering, where do we go from here? Like, if the only public account belonging to Ellie Conway doesn't even seem to be run by her, and even the mainstream media can't get in contact with her, then how are we actually going to get to the bottom of this? Like, I have to be honest, whoever is behind the marketing of this franchise worked hard to keep Ellie's real identity a secret. It is not easy to be anonymous on the internet. Every IG caption, everything that she or anyone else has ever said about her has all been carefully curated and filtered to make this person absolutely untraceable. Except for one teeny tiny problem. They missed a spot. Like, literally one sentence on the very last page of the book. After the story is over, at the very end of her acknowledgement section where she thanks everybody for their help with the story, Ellie Conway offers her thanks to one Dr. Robert Massey, Deputy Executive Director of the Royal Astronomical Society, for his patient explanation of star charts. And that is how the media found Ellie Conway. January 9th, 2024. The very same day the book was published, the Washington Post published an article called "Taylor Swift Didn't Write Argylle, So Who Did?" It seemed just like the other slew of articles, cleverly capitalizing on Taylor's name and the hype behind the book, but this one went the extra mile and interviewed Dr. Massey since he was mentioned in the acknowledgements. Massey had remembered, searching through his inbox, that the person asking about star charts in April 2022, identifying as, quote, a novelist writing a contracted spy thriller for Penguin Random House, and sending a couple of paragraphs from their manuscript in progress, didn't call herself Ellie. She introduced herself as Tammy Cohen. So who, might you ask, is Tammy Cohen? Well, I'm glad you asked. Shock of all shocks, Tammy Cohen is a British thriller writer. She's written multiple books under multiple different names, and while neither she nor anyone at her publishing house responded to the Washington Post's request for comment, I think we can fill in the rest here ourselves. As Dr. Massey pointed out, Tammy said the book was contracted. This means she didn't write a spy novel and then get it published like the story they're trying to sell. It means her publisher came to her first and paid her to write a spy novel. So yeah, Matthew Vaughn just needed someone to write a book called Argylle. That way he could make his movie called Argylle seem like it was based off a book called Argylle. That way it would be like super meta, since the movie is about someone writing a book called Argylle. And he most likely hired an established thriller writer who just happened to be British to write said book. And then they agreed to keep her identity a secret for marketing purposes, while the director publicly begged her to come out of the shadows to sell the image. And then the marketing team left just enough convenient hints to make it sort of maybe almost seem like the mystery author could be Taylor Swift of all people, thereby creating a self-propelled media frenzy fueled by one of the biggest fan bases on Earth. And that's basically it, actually. That's the mystery. This feels like a stunningly mundane and anticlimactic reveal after what could have been such an intriguing ending. Then congratulations, you now know exactly how it feels to read Argylle by Ellie Conway. Like, y'all did literally all of this for a book that at the end of the day is not good. If you had taken half of the effort you put into clout chasing after Taylor Swift's name and put it into, oh, I don't know, writing a decent story, then maybe I would be a bit more forgiving about all of this. And at this point, the only possible way this can all be somewhat redeemed is if the movie is, against all odds, not complete garbage. So you know what? Let's just time travel into the future so I can get the movie out of the way and see for myself. Hi, it's me popping in from the future. Please save me, the critics were not wrong. Let's just start with the obvious because this movie was a mess. Dua Lipa does more dancing than speaking in this movie, but considering her acting skills, that may have actually been for the best. Her delivery was in fact giving us nothing. The CGI and green screen effects were rough. Y'all had $200 million and you still paid your VFX artists and Chuck E. Cheese tickets. Actually, Chuck E. Cheese himself has better CGI than some of the scenes in this movie, but that's neither here nor there. Between Henry Cavill's Mandarin collar, the green outfit, and the tall hair, I was like, wait, why he got that Yu Yu Hakusho drip though? Like, okay, Yusuke. I'm tired of movies overusing incongruent, funky music from the 70s or whatever. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy was literally a decade ago. Please get over it. Some of the dialogue in this film was a choice. Like, one character pulls out a gun. I don't have a gun, so we're just gonna use my air up bottle, use my code. And he's like, if you don't answer my question, you're gonna be the temperature of my coffee right now, which is cold because of you. I'm being so for real right now, like that's literally a direct quote. There's a reason I'm the keeper of secrets. It's because I keep them. Like, I'm speechless. In fact, I actually wish the characters in the movie were speechless because it would still be better dialogue than whatever that was. Y'all should have just shot this in the early 1900s because it would have gone crazy on mute. Nobody in the theater was laughing. Like, things would happen that were clearly supposed to be jokes and everyone was just sitting there like, Argylle had the theater out here looking like Easter Island. And I've watched Kingsman, okay? I've watched X-Men First Class. I've had a lot of fun watching said film, so this is not a problem I have with Matthew Vaughn's directorial style. This is a problem I have with mid-movies. Some parts of this movie make absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like, in one part, this character doesn't want Ellie to overhear his conversation, so he goes in the bathroom, turns on the water, and then proceeds to talk louder than the water. Like, bro, what did you think was going to happen? She heard everything. You must have gone to spy school at DeVry University. And while I appreciate the novelty of the story within the story, when you're literally cutting back and forth between the real story and the meta story every 5 seconds, like every 5 words, 20 times within a scene in the middle of character sentences, it starts feeling less like a clever plot device and more like a cheap gimmick. This movie was almost 2.5 hours long, and for what? America, explain. In fact, that was the only thing they kept faithful from the book, because I remember praying to God that that would end as well. Told me twice, God. Shame on me. Y'all had Samuel L. Jackson, and you made him play one of the most boring roles of his career, and you did it during Black History Month, and you did it at my birthday dinner. Y'all just invented a new form of racism. I didn't mind Bryce Dallas Howard, so there's that, I guess. Sam Rockwell just felt like he was doing his best Ryan Reynolds impersonation. Man, I tried to like the cat, but half the time, he was just bad CGI. Anyway, that's that, I guess. I can't believe I just watched Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy Kids. And to be fair, the movie doesn't take itself very seriously, but that doesn't really save it. It's like, okay, the movie's goofy and bad. Now what? And there you have it, folks. Argylle, a book that tried to be a blockbuster before it even hit the shelves, a movie that tried to reinvent the wheel but ended up just spinning in circles, and a mystery that wasn't mysterious at all and was actually the least interesting answer possible. But hey, I had fun. Like, I genuinely loved making this video, and I hope you had a blast watching it. It was like a big puzzle where all the pieces fit together, but the picture it reveals is just a big trash can emoji. And who knows, maybe the true Agent Argylle was the friends we made along the way, and maybe some mysteries are better left unsolved. And while this is a fun case study in marketing teams blurring the lines between what's acceptable and what's not, Whether or not any of this actually works remains to be seen. Like, yes, people talked about the movie. Heck, we're talking about the movie right now. But does this actually translate to ticket sales? Only time will tell. But with the way movie tickets seem to double in price every few years, I think next time I'll save mine for something a little more interesting. Anyway, the video is over. Sorry, I know you wanted to watch it till the end of time because this is like the most fun you've had in your life or whatever, but I'll upload another one soon enough. Or never. Guess you got to subscribe to figure out which one's which. Okay, thanks, bye!